What's up guys, Darkdally here using the Far Cry 5 map editor, and today what I want to talk about is some of the advanced topics. Today I want to start a series on the advanced topics of map editing as far as terrain goes. And a lot of this is going to focus on matching your terrain to your backdrop, making your terrain look realistic, etc. Now today what we're talking about is time of day. Now here I've done a lot of things to make this terrain look as realistic as I could. Everything from vegetation collections to post effects, weather, fog, clouds, and we'll talk about all that, but today it's time of day. Now, right here I've done the best I can to make my time of day match my backdrop. Now there are a few things that stick out, like right here, and we'll tackle this in a future one. Things like this, which look fine when you get close up to them. This is another thing we'll talk about, which is feathering your paint together. Here I have three colors, red, green, and gray. We'll talk about this. At distance, that looks bad. What we're talking about today is time of day. From the viewer's perspective, down here on this hill, over here, really looks pretty fine matched with your backdrop, if that's what you're going with. However, when we look over here, notice here the background, or at least my terrain, starts silhouetting against the background because of the time of day I chose. Now, let's have a look at that right now. First, let me go ahead and I'm going to save my work because where I'm at, I'm pretty happy with. So let's go ahead and save my work. Now, right here, this is where my map is starting to skyline against my backdrop. Now, this particular map, let's zoom way out and have a look at this map because this is part one of the series. I've made this map. This is a start to a map. I've made a mountain ridge all along the edges of this map specifically so that the player can't see this ugly blue area, this blue gap they put between your playable area and the backdrop. So thus, I've created a mountainous region on the outside. That's probably a good idea. The problem is, no matter what time of day you make it, some part of it is going to silhouette and skyline against the backdrop. Again, I know I have lots of fog and weather effects here. We'll talk about that. Some of that can help you. But the more fog you put, and again, we'll talk about that later, the more some parts are going to skyline. Let's have a look at time of day. Let's go back to what I was originally talking about. Let's go to select my time of day. That's going to be environment and audio. Up here at day-night cycle. You can see right here I have it set. Let's go up, 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 up. You can see right here I have it set to 1600 hours. So this is a simulation of 4 p.m. and this map will be stuck at, 1600 hours. So the sun's at this angle, which means some angles look really good against the backdrop. Like, well, let's go down to where the player would be at, like right here. This looks excellent. It blends right in with the backdrop. And that's what I was going for. Again, I've used weather, sky, cloud height, fog, post effects. I've used a lot of other things to get this. I've also used a lot of trees. And the reason I'm using trees is to block some of the errors that you see on draw distance. So that's a good strategy too. But here it looks good. When we look over here, it looks bad. Now when I change the time, now that looks pretty good. But if we look somewhere else, it might not have the look that we want. It might look better, but we might not have the shadows that we want. So time of day is something to take into account. Every time you change the time of day, like see, this looks pretty good. Now I'm designing this particular map to be a target shooting range. This time of day actually looks pretty sexy. This is 7 in the morning. It actually looks pretty good from all points of view. Wait, well, let's get down to the players. Well, here, let's just zone into the map. Let's just zone into the map here. It actually looks pretty good from all points of view. You know what? It's 7 in the morning. You know what? This might have been the fix. You see, I had this problem with the mountains silhouetting against my background. And now the point of this was to introduce this series on super advanced or, advanced terrain editing. The point of this series is also to learn a bit as I go. You know what? 7 in the morning might just be my cure. We still have a bit of silhouetting over here. And this is what I want to show you. There is stuff I want to show you over here. Is how to fix that. Like right here. See that mountain right there? We're going to want to fix that. Because that's skylining pretty high against the background. Everything else looks pretty good. You know what? I was pretty stuck on 1600, but I think that 700 might be the time I want. Let's go back to the editor, fix that one mountain. We can find it here easily by simply looking around from the same point of view, and we can see that mountain right there. Now, the best way to fix this, again, we're talking advanced terrain editing, so you should be able to already know how to do most of this stuff. See this really rough terrain I have here? Now, at certain times of day, this is what I'm pointing out here, this may not look so bad, but at this time of day, this is where the shadow hits and it looks bad. No worries. We're going to go to terrain editing. You should know how to do some of this stuff already. We're going to go to smooth. Smooth is going to be the tool you're going to want to use to lower these peaks. I wouldn't recommend using anything other than smooth. Using lower terrain or flatten could totally fuck up your skyline. Use smooth. Take note of your brush size. Take note of your brush size and hardness. I don't worry too much about speed because on the PS4, I'm using the R2 trigger, and because of the analog nature of the R2 trigger, I can really control the speed myself. So I just leave the speed where it's at. That's a pretty decent tip, I'd like to think. So we're just going to worry about hardness and radius. I don't worry about distortion when I'm smoothing. This right here, what we have right here, this is a pretty good radius and hardness. I wanted to show it to you on flat ground. We're going to use this and we're going to lower, we're just going to kind of level off this mountain peak just a bit. And we're going to move this, I'm going to move the left stick in kind of a circle, just to kind of nice and evenly round it off. Always want to move back to your point of view. That's a little better, but I'd still like it a little, you know, more natural. So we're just going to use that some more. Smooth really is the tool you want to use when you're trying to do stuff like this. That peak now looks fairly natural. Notice I have put a bit of fog back there. Again, I'll talk about fog and weather effects later. Let's move on to the other ones. Over here we have, yeah, a bit of a catastrophe that was, you know, the effect of terrain. But again, this didn't necessarily look that bad when it was 4 o'clock. Now that it's 7 o'clock, this does look bad because now this is skylining against the background just a tad. So we're just going to use the smooth tool. And this is what this tutorial is about, is when you change the time of day, always remember it's going to change the way your skyline especially looks against the backdrop, if that's your concern. We want to decrease some of the sharpness. Like this looks like a bit of a razor's edge. Now that's fine because these things do exist in nature. But this is a bit hard the way the sun's hitting it. So we're just going through here with the smooth tool. I would not recommend using any other tool. Lower terrain or flatten would completely destroy all the work you put into it. And trust me, I put hours of work into creating this thing. The last thing I want to do is fuck it up by using something like flatten or lower. We just want to slowly kind of soften this right here. So always pay attention to your time of day. And that's one thing that you want to adjust. Time is really one thing you want to adjust. You would be amazed at how different your terrain could look at a different time of day. Here we have it lowered pretty decently. There's still a few rough spots I want to iron out. But remember guys, as an advanced terrain editing technique, advancing time of day can really give you a beautiful, picturesque scenery like this that flows seamlessly into your backdrop, so long as you adjust the terrain right to match the shadows. Guys, that's it for today's advanced tutorial on terrain editing in Far Cry 5. Today we did a little bit on time of day. Now I know this is about terrain editing, but weather, fog, post effects, clouds, backdrops, things like that, those are the things that actually make your terrain work, and you want to know how those work. Once you get those set right, it's easier to edit your terrain. All right guys, that's it for today's tutorial on editing your time of day. I know it's not exactly hard to know how to edit your time of day, but it is a good thing to know how the time of day is going to affect your terrain. Next, we'll look more into terrain, into fog, and other effects to make your terrain flow seamlessly into the background. Guys, I'm Darkdally. I will catch you all next time.